Thank you for joining us for The Drive Back, the movie podcast where we imitate our favorite thing to do after a movie, which of course is to talk about it on the ride home. I'm Garrett, and as always, I'm joined by my good friend and co-host Adrian.
Howdy diddly.
And today we have a franchise fever. It's been a while since we've done one of these. What is a franchise fever, Adrian?
Franchise fever is where we get really sick. No, it's where we watch an entire franchise. What we determine a franchise is a film series that has 3 or more entries into it. So if you know anything that has like one sequel, that is not a franchise. But things like Lord of the Rings, things like Indiana Jones, things like Fast and Furious, things with multiple entries, more than a few entries, I should say, are considered franchises, and we review all of them at once. So the reason we haven't done one in a while is because they take a while. Because some films series, like the one we're doing today, has double-digit entries. Yeah. So it takes quite a while to get ready to review these long ones.
But it is really fun because the last 2 franchise fevers we've done were your favorite franchise, Fast and Furious, and then we did Lord of the Rings, which is one of mine. And today we get to do one that we both love pretty much equally, I think. And
I would agree. Yeah,
we're gonna have some hot takes. We're going to a galaxy far, far away.
Stuart Little.
That's the galaxy of far, far away.
I watched the wrong movie. Are there not 11 Stuart Little films?
I think there are now, if you include animated ones. But all this and more coming up on the drive back. Alrighty, so Star Wars. This is going to be an interesting episode. This is one we've been looking forward to making for a long time.
Yeah, I think this was literally like when we formed the podcast. I think we were like, we'll definitely do this. And here we are at episode 77, finally getting this out to you.
You know what I just realized? If it's episode 77, the original Star Wars came out in 1977.
We'll pretend it was planned all along.
Oh, no, it was planned.
Yeah.
No, totally. But let's go ahead. We have a long episode today. And most of you out there who are listening have probably seen all of these movies. And I don't think we need to spend too long, or at least most of them.
I would agree. I feel like Solo is probably the most unseen, if I had to pick.
I would agree. Yeah. Which we'll probably spend a little bit more time on that when we get to it then.
Yeah.
But let's go ahead. We're going to dive right in with... and we're going to be 2 things. First, we're going to be going in release order of Trilogy, followed by supplements. So 4, 5, 6, 1, 2, 3, 7, 8, 9, then Rogue One and Solo. So that's going to be the order we go through. Second, if you're wondering why my voice sounds off, I am coming off of being sick, but my voice sounded too good to not want to record today. That being said, let's go ahead and dive right in. So the first film we're going to be talking about is Episode 4, which is A New Hope. Released in 1977, it was directed by George Lucas and stars Mark Hamill, Carrie Fisher, and Harrison Ford. Luke Skywalker joins forces with a Jedi Knight, a cocky pilot, a Wookiee, and 2 droids to save the galaxy from the Empire's world-destroying battle station, while also attempting to rescue Princess Leia from the mysterious Darth Vader. It won 7 Oscars back in 1978 or 77 for Best Art Direction, Best Costume Design, Best Sound, Best Film Editing, Best Visual Effects, and Best Original Score, as well as a Special Achievement Award for Ben Burtt for Sound Design. It was nominated for 4 Oscars, including Best Picture, Best Director, Best Supporting Actor for Alec Guinness, and Best Original Screenplay. And also, it is worth it to note, it is the 25th highest rated film on IMDb of all time, which... makes sense, because this is a landmark moment in film history. Jaws created the blockbuster in 1975, that when where people were lining up in the streets. Star Wars obliterated box office and expectations.
Yeah.
And I think the main question we can look at now is, does it hold up, 50 years later? Yeah, I think it does.
Yeah, I think there's. This might be a slightly lukewarm take. I do think it's a phenomenal movie. I think there's a lot of passion and nostalgia around it.
Yeah.
And I totally pay the homage to it foraging its way into infamy and into the Hall of Fame in multiple categories. But I think compared to nowadays films, it's a pretty bland movie. If you stack it up to stuff we get nowadays. And again, it forged the trail. We would not have what we have today without this movie. But I think if you haven't seen any of them and you're in that group and you're like, let's go back, I actually might just kind of jump the shark here and say, watch one of the more recent ones and get into the kind of the more modern version of Star Wars and then go back. I feel like you might find this one feeling a little dated in its pacing and in its style. But again, it created the films we watch nowadays. So the practical effects are incredible. They still hold up because they're practical.
Yeah.
In fact, sometimes if you watch one with a little more CGI in it, where they've tried to upscale it, the CGI looks worse than the practical effects from the original film.
Specifically the Jabba the Hutt sequence, yeah.
Yeah.
But like some of the touches, like with the X-Wings during the Death Star sequence, like that makes it better, I would say.
Yeah, the little stuff, but when they tried to like improve an entire scene,
yeah,
I think it definitely looks a little worse than the practical effects.
I definitely think that there should be. I think this year or next year is going to be the 45th anniversary of the original
The
Star Wars.
4K of all of them.
Well, we already have 4K versions of all of them. I would want to see Disney Plus on Star Wars Day next year release the original versions of all three films. I think that would bring a lot of fans back.
Well, yeah, because I know there's like a bunch of projects about restoring the originals, and the original VHSs go for like thousands of dollars.
Yeah.
For people that want to watch the actual original.
Exactly.
So yeah, I agree. I think if they released that, I think I would go watch them just to see the differences. I think it'd be amazing.
Yeah, and back to what you're saying, I definitely agree. I think that this film does, for some, I think can be a weird experience because it's kind of different from your normal films today in terms of pacing. Its writing isn't also 100% the best.
What I was hinting at is like that stuff is the stuff that kind of dates it. It just feels a little older.
But I think it's also one of those things like if you haven't seen Star Wars and you're getting into it for the first time, it's kind of hard because these are films that you watch when you're a kid usually, and that's how you get into it because it's cool, it's the lightsabers and it's the battles, but then like you get older,
a friend or a father shows you the movie like, hey, this is what I want. Like you get introduced.
Exactly. Yeah, and I know my brother had the recent pleasure of showing his girlfriend all 11 movies because she had never seen them, and she ended up liking them. So I guess it's kind of one of those situations. It's like maybe it's who you watch it with, or like we were saying with Lord of the Rings.
A huge thing. Yeah.
Yeah, like Lord of the Rings. If you're watching with someone who's passionate and knows what they're talking about, then it can make it better. Well,
I think it's also this is a series that I think is a lot about what was going on in your life and who you first watched it with. Because if you had a bad first watching experience, so your introduction to the world is kind of more tainted, or it was more critical, or somebody was kind of bagging on it, I think it's going to be hard for you because you have this core memory of nitpicking it apart. These movies, none of them are perfect. None of them are like, Garrett has a different idea here. I don't think any of them are, like, to me, 100 out of 100. I don't think any of them are outstanding, like, in their... They did a lot of things uniquely, but none of them are perfect that are, like, have gone down as the greatest of all time in terms of, like, specific things they did. So you have to forgive them. And I think if you watched them for the first time and you had fun with whoever you watched them with and you just enjoyed the films for what they were and the art experience they were intended to be, they're just fun. And you can just have fun with them.
They're swashbuckling adventures. They're supposed to feel similar to your Robin Hoods and your, similar films of the type. And they're the classic hero's journey, obviously. That classic fictional idea, the idea of the hero's journey is literally what makes this movie. It was written into the script. So,
and you can tell in some of the stunts too that it is that adventure, like you said, swashbuckling. Like there's scenes that are like exactly out of a Pirates movie almost that feel identical, just with blasters instead of swords.
Exactly. The character archetypes, the action, everything kind of just reeks kind of that classic, adventure pulp kind of swashbuckling narrative. And even samurai films as well are really thrown in there. Especially after watching Seven Samurai, you see a lot of similarities, especially when it comes to the Jedi. So
do we think maybe for each film we want to do like since a lot of people have seen it, do we want to do like our favorite scene and our least favorite scene?
Sure. We can do that.
From each film?
Yeah.
Okay. Do you want me to go first?
Sure. You brought it up.
Okay, so my least favorite scene is the end of this movie when they're getting their awards. Mm-hmm. And there's music playing, and it's like a whole awards thing. But if you watch that scene and you mentally take out the soundtrack, it is the most awkward scene in existence. Nobody talks. Like, yeah, it makes no sense. Literally, nobody says. It's so dumb. And then, like, at one point, Chewbacca just goes like, and everyone's like, ah! And everyone like claps.
Oh, the creature made noise. It is an awkward scene. What's your favorite scene?
My favorite scene is the one where the mouse drives the little car through the. No, that's Stuart Little again. God
damn it.
No, my favorite.
This is the only time Stuart Little's been confused for Star Wars, and I feel like the Stuart Little people are like, "Oh yeah."
That's what I do on this podcast. I bring unknown films back into the limelight in relation to things they've never been related to. No, my favorite scene would probably be. Oh man, I would literally set this whole bit up for the Stuart Little thing. My favorite scene would probably be the final scene where he removes the like guiding thing for his launcher, where he removes that and just does it by force. I think that would be the most. That's like the full circle, trust in yourself, you can do it moment. That is perfect.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's the entire point.
Yeah.
For me, my favorite sequence in the movie is probably. It's always been the attack on the Death Star. I love the battle sequences in Star Wars, which we'll talk about when we get to Rogue One. I always love the battles. That's what I always liked. I like the kind of futuristic military aspect of the films and the kind of the idea of the Empire versus the Rebellion, the the Republic versus the Separatists, the Resistance versus the First Order, whoever it is. I always loved those sequences. So that always has stuck out to me. My least favorite sequence, and this is going to be a hot take, is, and we'll talk about this more when we get to the sequel trilogy and when we get to our episode next week. I don't like Luke as a character in the original trilogy. I think he's a whiny little piece of crap, and he is not a nostalgic character for me, which is probably
very weak.
Like the sequel trilogy, but we'll get there. But so when we first get that intro, and he's just that whiny little kid. Well, I was going to go to Tosti Station and get some power converters. He sounds like
slap that smile right off your face, kid.
He sounds like every Valley girl here, and we were going to go to Starbucks and get my mocha. Like it just always rubs me the wrong way. So
so kind of I guess a side story is shout out to my dad, Xavier. It's not my dad's name for anybody listening.
Your dad is a mutant with telekinetic powers.
There's also other people named Xavier than Professor X.
Only one.
Everyone named Xavier is after Professor X from the X-Men series.
They're all his spawn.
Yeah, but he got out of the Navy, and Star Wars was in theaters, and he knew nothing about it, and his sister said, hey, do you want to go see this new thing, Star Wars? It's supposed to be really good. So they paid a nickel to go see Star Wars in theaters. And if you've seen this, and nowadays, again, it's very dated now in terms of some of the CGI and the effects we get now, but back in 77, when this came out, seeing an entire space battle play out on screen was mind-blowing to my dad. Like, they left the theater not even knowing what they had seen. Like, it was so advanced. Yeah. The practical effects and the storyline. Like, there's a reason this movie has gone down in history. Because when it came out, nothing like this had ever existed before. There was no space opera film. It was the first of its kind, and it cost a nickel, and I wish I could see that version of the film. Like you said, I hope Disney releases that original, because that's what changed film forever.
Yeah, and I think the landmark kind of moment in history that this film does is why it is remembered so well, in the kind of techniques and the technologies that it made possible.
Yeah.
Is why people remember it so fondly in the industry. Even people who don't like Star Wars admit the impact that the original trilogy has
Oh,
had.
I don't think there's any denying it. I
Oh
think
no,
it's
yeah.
incredible. Yeah.
I also did the math real quick. I was curious. So when your dad went and saw this for a nickel back in 1977, if that he would to pay for a movie ticket now, he would have had to have seen that movie 300 times, because the average movie ticket now is about $15. And
Oh, you're saying in order to pay the equivalent
of today, yeah, you
Yeah.
have to see it 300 times. That's insane. But movies have gotten more expensive, so it makes sense.
Well, I think it's also
And theaters
different, right?
cost
Like,
money.
well, it's also not on film anymore, right? Like
Yeah.
we get surround sound. Like, there's a whole experience now that goes with movie theaters.
Exactly. Yeah. So, but we have a lot of movies to get through, so I think we should probably just give our final thoughts for A New Hope and a score, and we'll move right on. Adrian, what are your final thoughts for A New Hope and your score?
Final thoughts for A New Hope are that it feels a little dated if you're going back and watching it for the first time, but if you have the nostalgia of it, you're gonna agree that it's definitely a Hallmark film. There is no denying it. You kind of can't turn away from it. So because of that, I gave it a flat 80. I think it's really good. I don't think it's perfect. I think there's a lot of things that are frustrating with it, and it's not the original. I mean, any version that you're going to watch that you can stream or you can buy is going to be an edited version of the film. So again, I'd love to see the original. I think it would just improve my score knowing that it was the source material.
Yeah.
So I think the fact that it's been changed so many times and each version we get has entire scenes modified just takes a little bit away for me. But yeah, flat 80 for me.
Gotcha. It was a little surprising, actually. But I would say that the original Star Wars A New Hope is a landmark moment in film history, and it continues to inspire young filmmakers and fans alike. I think because of its pedigree, because of its importance, I think my score is a little bit higher. Also, there is a bit of nostalgia as well. I've been watching it since I was like 4 years old. So with that, I gave the original a 95, just because, again, of its importance and I would say its pedigree.
Yeah.
But let's go ahead and move right along to Episode 5, which was The Empire Strikes Back, released in 1980. It was directed by Irvin Kershner and stars Mark Hamill, Carrie Fisher, and Harrison Ford. That doesn't really change much for the next two. After the rebels are brutally overpowered by the Empire on the ice planet Hoth, Luke Skywalker begins Jedi training with Yoda, while his friends are pursued across the galaxy by Darth Vader and bounty hunter Boba Fett. I almost said Boba Fett.
Boba
Fett. That's his younger brother. It won an Oscar for Best Sound and was nominated for Best Original Score and Best Art Direction. It's also currently the 15th highest rated film of all time on IMDb.
Really? That's interesting.
Yes. Very, very interesting. Which, with that reaction, I'm curious to see what you have to say about Empire Strikes Back.
Yeah, I'll go first. Empire Strikes Back, I feel like I like this one a little more, to be honest.
Okay.
And maybe this lines up with an opinion that I'll have later about second movies in a trilogy. But I think I like when the heroes aren't winning.
Yeah.
I think it just feels better. It's the reason I like Infinity War potentially more than Endgame. I think it's just something that I really enjoy when something goes against the status quo. The heroes are always successful no matter what. So it kind of defies that odds. And at the end of this, you're on your toes. The movie leaves you wondering what's going to happen.
Yeah.
And I think I like it a lot better for that. It's not just the hero's journey, it's the hero's struggle. And I think I align a lot more with that.
Absolutely. And the fact that this film did the whole Marvel holding a secret until the moment it came out is huge.
And it was easier back then.
It was a lot easier back then.
You could just not tell anyone.
There's also no rumor mill,
and there's no one on TikTok analyzing frame by frame every trailer that comes out.
Yeah.
Speaking of, there's definitely 3 Spider-Mans in No Way Home.
Oh my god, you're gonna ruin the movie for yourself. There's not. It's Doc Ock and Venom in that sequence. No, I'm just kidding. I agree. I think The Empire Strikes Back is way stronger.
It's Doc Ock and the Green Goblin.
Is it?
In that sequence, I think is the rumor.
We'll find out. But yeah, I definitely think I like The Empire Strikes Back a lot more. And this is probably, I'll spoil it. This is my favorite film in the franchise.
Whoa!
It is, well, I would say it's the best film in the franchise. Tied for favorite. Because it's such a strong film. Outside of being important for the story and just being, crucial, it's just a damn good movie. Like, it's more well written than the first movie was.
Agreed. Well, I think they kind of found their stride,
Yeah, George Lucas found his stride. He had more time to put into writing because he didn't direct.
Yeah.
So, like, that gives him more time to expand the story fully and fully flesh out a lot of these characters. But it's just everything. The acting in this movie is 10 times better, even from Luke. And no offense to Mark Hamill. I love Mark Hamill. But just, like, the character is not very well written. I think that's the issue I have. But this movie's better. Definitely. But it's also darker. Which I like, yeah. Yeah, usually you kind of want to go darker with your second movie or deeper, however you want to say it.
Yeah, tends to be the pace of series.
Absolutely. And I think this movie's just... The music also in this movie. We get more of the legendary theme songs and everything from this movie. The Force theme, Yoda's theme, Leia's theme, the Empire March, the Imperial March, which wasn't in the original film.
A lot of people don't know that, actually. A lot of people think it's like been there the whole time, but no, it pops up in the second one.
Also, common misconception, Darth Vader does not say, Luke, I am your father in this film.
Big misconception.
He does say, no, I am your father. Which, if you don't know that that's a spoiler by now, like, that's the most talked about spoiler in film history, I feel. Besides The Sixth Sense, which I won't say here, but...
If you just got caught off guard by that statement... I feel like we have a lot of episodes that you should maybe adhere to the spoiler warning. If you don't know this one, I feel like we have, like, that's a crazy spoiler that has existed for so long that I feel like you just have not seen any spoilers at all. So just adhere to every warning we've ever given because you're going to be surprised by all of them.
Sure. Yeah, definitely. But what else would you say about the film?
I guess I would say my favorite kind of fun fact about this film is the fact that Mark Hamill got in an accident in the beginning and had a huge scar on his face, like literally had a facial like bandage. So that entire scene in the beginning where he gets attacked by the Wampa?
Yep, you got it.
By the Wampa, that was literally added to the script to accommodate for his new face.
Yeah.
Which I just think is a super... I mean, I watch a lot of YouTube channels where they say that filmmaking as a whole is just problem solving. Mm-hmm. The entire thing is figuring out how to solve a specific problem over and over and over again. And they had to really figure out how to solve their main character looking vastly different than in the first film. Oh, yeah. And they figured it out. So I just think props to them for that.
Definitely. It's also similar to Indiana Jones, when... They show in the third movie when he gets the scar on his chin, because Harrison Ford has that scar on his chin. Yeah. They show it come from the whip. So it's another problem solving. It's great.
Yeah. It's just a way to solve the answer. Like, here's we'll explain it away.
Absolutely. Yeah. So what was your favorite moment in the film?
So I think that's my favorite moment.
The Wampa attack?
Yeah, I know it's kind of lame. I like it because of a lot of things that it stands for. Like, it was very impactful because it was very controversial as well. Mark Hamill didn't know, I guess, supposedly didn't know that he was going to kill the Wampa. So now in modern cuts, you don't see it. In previous cuts, he kills the Wampa, I believe, and that because PETA and everyone was like, it's an innocent animal, it's just doing his thing. They've now cut that out of the film. So yeah, and then of course, I mean, I almost don't want to take the classic "I am your father" moment because obviously that's everybody's favorite moment. So I guess that's first place. But if I had to pick a second, it would actually be that initial. And then when Harrison Ford has to, I guess the sequence when he has to cut into that animal and
Oh, the
puts Luke
tauntaun.
in it. Oh gosh, what a disgusting scene.
I mean, hey, he saved his friend. That's all that matters.
That is true. And my least favorite scene is probably when Margalo breaks her wing. Oh wait, that's Stuart Little too. Shoot. My least favorite scene is probably the entire encounter. I know it's like probably a lot of people's favorite, but I find the whole encounter between, or the whole dynamic, I guess, between Han and Leia during this film really cringy. And really like forced for the time, or maybe I guess a representative of the time. Like, I don't find Han. I mean, I know he's supposed to be like this suave, cool character. I feel like he's really overconfident with Leia. Like the way he talks to her is like he's just all that and he knows it. And I get that's the character, but it just doesn't translate to me well. It just feels awkward a lot of the time, and she feels awkward, and it's odd. But I get it; they get it. Spoiler alert later. There's a whole thing, but just in this movie, it's odd.
Sure. I would say my favorite moment. I gotta stick with the theme. I love the Hoth battle at the beginning with the AT-ATs, which are one of my favorite vehicles in any kind of film.
And the practical effects in that are crazy.
Yeah, all motion capture miniatures.
Yeah,
it's great, and it works really well. But I've always loved that moment. When I was a kid, I used to play like in my head with my brother doing that kind of stuff. I just love doing that.
Yeah.
Least favorite moment of this movie. This is going to be the only time this entire podcast I do not have a least favorite moment.
Wow.
I thoroughly love this movie, so
well, good for you.
Yeah. All positivity over here. Until we get to a couple movies coming up. Yeah. Yeah, let's go ahead. We got a lot of movies to get through. We're only on number 2 here. What are your final thoughts on the score for Empire?
Final thoughts are this movie's definitely better than the first one. It's got a lot more going for it. It's more refined. So I gave this movie an 89.
All right. I said that Empire is the quintessential Star Wars movie. Its writing, cast, and music are all on point to deliver a gut punch of a story that makes it the best in the series. And because of that, I gave it a 99.
Nice. Close.
Pretty close, yeah. Moving right along, though, to the third film, which is going to be The Return of the Jedi. Or excuse me, Return of the Jedi. There's no "the" in there. Found that out later. Released in 1983, it was directed by Richard Marquand and stars Mark Hamill, Carrie Fisher, and Harrison Ford. Again, that has not changed. After a daring mission to rescue Han Solo from Jabba the Hutt, the rebels dispatched to Endor to destroy the second Death Star. Meanwhile, Luke struggles to help Darth Vader back from the dark side without falling into the Emperor's trap. It was nominated for 4 Oscars for Best Original Score, Best Art Direction, Best Sound, and Best Sound Effects Editing. It's also the 87th highest rated film of all time on IMDb.
Quite a drop, though.
Which I do not necessarily agree with that being so.
Yeah, I feel like that's a significant drop on the list for a movie that's also pretty good.
It is pretty good. I'm saying I think it needs to be lower than 87.
Oh.
I don't think it's nearly as good as the first 2. But it's still very nostalgic and very fun.
It dropped 70 points.
No, yeah. You know.
It's not as good. That's not
maybe
nearly
somewhere in the 120s. I don't know.
Okay.
But I don't make these rankings up.
Then I guess we'll start going faster, I guess, or quicker. But Boba Fett is in this movie. Super sick.
For a minute and a half.
And he becomes an iconic character, and he's literally in it.
Well, he was in Empire first.
Well, that's true, but he's literally in. But he's in the movies probably a total of like 5 minutes.
There's the documentary that just came out on Disney Plus called Under the Helmet, where they tell you the exact number of time or amount of time that he's in the movies for. It's like 6 minutes and 6 minutes 33 seconds.
Okay.
And he has 4 lines of dialogue. I almost said 3. 4 lines of dialogue, and that's it. And he became an icon.
Because people all young boys and girls thought he just looked so cool.
Oh, yeah. And that's why we can't wait for next month for Book of Boba Fett.
Oh, my gosh. Where they're actually going to make him like a good leader. I'm so stoked. Yeah,
I'm
but
so ready.
like a fair one. I'm so stoked for that.
Hopefully.
So, yeah, I mean, this movie's not as good. It seems like they really struggled to wrap up this kind of arc. They tried their best, but it just didn't have the epic third act feeling that I think it should have, which I think is honed a lot better in later films. I don't think a lot of people give credit to that, but that'll be my hot take, I guess.
Sure.
But yeah, I just think it kind of falls flat. I don't think it's as impactful as I think they wanted it to be.
Yeah, I think it definitely has its impact, and I think the final moments with Darth Vader and Luke are among some of the most powerful in the trilogy. The kind of, once he, again, spoiler, when he redeems himself somewhat, even though he's killed probably millions of people in this universe.
Yeah.
He has that moment where he's like, I see my son again. And it's like, oh, that's great.
The reveal as well is pretty sick when the mask breaks. Yeah, they did. I mean, there's impactful moments. I just think the movie as a whole didn't hit the home run they wanted it to.
Yes, and I will add, and actually I will say my favorite moment, which it would have been the big space battle, which is fantastic in this movie. But my actual favorite moment is when Luke and Darth Vader are fighting and they both cut into each other's hands, and Luke sees that his father's hand is just as robotic as his is.
Mm-hmm.
That moment is so freaking good.
Yeah.
What was your favorite moment of the movie?
My favorite moment would probably be the final battle. Just I think it's pretty iconic, and you see
Oh yeah,
like Palpatine and all that stuff. Like I just think it's a great final scene. And you see the battle going on in the background and everything. I mean, it's really good. I think I'm more focused on my least favorite part of this movie, which is that I think the entire wrap up of Luke and Leia is very weak. I think it's like, I think they had this idea of this big reveal, but everyone was like, okay, well, we get it. Like, we definitely know. I think the hints that they tried to drop that were supposed to be too subtle were very obvious. So the big reveal of that kind of falls really flat. And then just the whole conversation that they have is really awkward. So that whole dynamic, I think, falls really short.
especially after that kiss in Empire. It's kind of weird.
Well, they cut what happened after.
Whoa. All to get revenge on Han for being a scruffy looking nerf herder. But I gotta say, my least favorite moment in this film is gonna be an interesting one to kind of explain.
Okay.
I feel like years later, after watching this movie so much, I completely forget what happens after the Tatooine stuff and before the final battle. And the middle part of this movie just kind of fades out for me.
Talking about the sand, like that whole section.
No, so there's the stuff with Jabba in the beginning, which is great.
Yeah.
But then once they leave Tatooine, they meet back up with the rebel forces, right? Luke goes to back to Yoda, and Yoda dies. But like everything from that point up to the part where the final battle at Endor starts taking place, all that just kind of fades out for me.
Yeah, what happens?
I just don't forget it. I don't know. It's been
what happens? Do you know now?
Luke finishes his training with Yoda and comes back, and then, oh my gosh, I'll be fair. I didn't watch this before.
I didn't either. Yeah,
because I was like, I know these movies so well, and apparently not.
And you brought up the section of the movie that you don't know.
That's why I don't like it, because it's not memorable.
Well, I think I
remember everything else about this saga except that second act of this movie.
Yeah, and I think that's because like the first act and the final act are so large and have so many memorable moments that are talked about that whole middle section just gets overshadowed, which I think is probably the best kind of forgettable problem you could have.
True.
Which is that the rest of your movie is memorable except for that section. So, yeah. I mean, I definitely think it's the weakest of the three, though. So I guess I can give my final thought.
Sure.
My final thought is that I think this movie is not as good as the other three for sure. But I think it has, or as the other two, of the three. But I definitely think it's it loses its luster and it misses the mark, I think, on what they wanted to hit. It doesn't really resonate with me personally as much as the second one, and even as much as the first one. So I just think it falls a little short. And I think it would have been better if Stuart Little was in it.
All right, that's a hot take.
But because of that, I gave this movie a 79.
79. All right.
Yeah. I think it's like I said, I think it's not as good, but I definitely think it's part of the trilogy. I mean, it's there. Yeah. It's got its great moments, it's got its impactful things. It's just it misses a little bit.
Absolutely. And I think we're pretty much of the same mind here. I think while it's not the most well done in the trilogy, I think it has its impactful moments, and I think it's still a lot of fun. Like, this is more fun than the second one, obviously, and it's more kind of the heroes getting to get their final victory. Well, until we get the sequel trilogy. But funny enough, I gave it a 79 as well.
Wow, look at that.
1 point.
Wow.
Alrighty. Now moving on to where the conversation's going to get a little bit more fun. We're going to start talking about the prequel trilogy. The first movie is going to be Episode 1, The Phantom Menace. Released in 1999, it was directed by George Lucas and stars Liam Neeson, Ewan McGregor, and Natalie Portman. Two Jedi escape a hostile blockade to find allies and come across a young boy who may bring balance to the Force, but the long-dormant Sith resurface to claim their original glory. It was nominated for 3 Oscars, including Best Sound Editing, and Best Visual Effects. It won a Razzie Award for the Worst Supporting Actor for Ahmed Best, who played Jar Jar Binks.
Really?
And was nominated for 6 more Razzies, including Worst Picture, Worst Director, Worst Screenplay, Worst Screen Couple, Worst Supporting Actor for Jake Lloyd, and Worst Supporting Actor for Sofia Coppola, who apparently was in the movie, and I didn't even know that. Francis Ford Coppola's daughter. Wow. Let's dive into Episode 1. I will go ahead and start out, because I feel like you started out with the all the original trilogy. I definitely do not think that this movie is as bad as a lot of people like to think it is, or anything. It's still not good.
Yeah, I'd agree.
There's a lot of flaws, but it's... and going back now, there's a lot more practical effects in the movie than you would have thought there were because of this over-reliance on CGI that comes with the next two.
I think a lot of people, I mean, even, I would say, just kind of jumping ahead, even the third film has way more practical effects than people give it credit for.
Yeah.
They still stuck with that theme. It's just CGI was also coming into existence.
Or, like, reaching its kind of more mature stage.
Yeah.
Definitely. But again, this film is still bad. Jake Lloyd is not a good actor in this movie.
It ruined his life.
It literally did. Yeah, it's really sad. And he doesn't deserve that. He was a kid. Like, what do you expect? George Lucas doesn't really have the eye for talent. And we'll get into that later. But when they're in the Watto's workshop.
Watto, yeah.
And they're like, oh, you can go clean up and go home. He's like, yippee! That moment is still just incredible. Or when he's talking to Padme for the first time. Are you an angel?
Who wrote the dialogue? I don't know.
George Lucas wrote the dialogue. He's horrible at it.
That's what I'm saying. I think he wasn't that great of an actor, and he had cringy dialogue written for him. So I think it was a combo of just being set up for failure.
It's like, here's a 10-year-old boy. Go ahead and fall in love with this 24-year-old princess. Sure.
Oh,
okay.
And she's down. In the film, he's like a baby, and she's like, "Oh, Annie," and you're like,
he's already pet names, and he's not even 10. Oh my gosh! I think he's older than 10, but it looks like he's 10.
Yeah. He's tiny.
But let's go ahead and talk some positives, though. Liam Neeson is fantastic in this movie.
Yeah, 100%. And I'm
is usually.
Yeah, and I'm also a fan of Christian Hayden. That's
the next movie. Hayden Christensen plays Anakin in 2 and 3. Jake Lloyd plays him in this one.
Oh yeah, he's so young. I'm thinking of Liam Neeson and Ian McGregor. Yeah.
Ian McGregor is the best thing of this trilogy.
Yes, absolutely.
I'm so excited for his show.
And both of them coming back. Sorry, I jumped ahead, but yeah, I was mixing up the Padawan and Master.
Oh. Oof.
But I think Darth Maul is also super cool in this movie. Very ominous villain. I love that they don't reveal anything. Mm-hmm. It's very shrouded in mystery the entire time. So that's super, super cool. And then my favorite part of this movie is the pod racing. I want to be a pod racer so bad.
Okay.
I think that you can tell that the crowd is digitally repeated like 100 times.
Mm-hmm. Some of them
And
are
it's
just Q-tips.
it's a super awkward scene, but gosh darn it, does pod racing not look like the most fun thing in the galaxy?
I always used to hate that sequence, but I don't mind it.
Why did you hate it?
It was awkward. Like, it didn't prove anything to me about Anakin. Like,
I could see that.
He's supposed to be an incredible pilot, not a race car driver. I guess maybe the two are interchangeable, but
I guess in the future, because it is a floating vehicle.
yeah, but it's not like a pod racer can go up into space. It'd be really funny if it could, but I don't know.
Wow!
Just like eyes like bursting out because he's in. That's not my least favorite moment in the movie. It's there. I can stand it now, but it always kind of took me out of the movie. But,
Interesting. I think it was
I
put
was like
in
the
for
other
the
pod
kids.
racers instead. I was like, I don't care about Anakin.
Yeah, I don't think I care about Anakin. I just like the concept of pod race. Like the race seems
Yeah.
like a very cool thing to exist, and I love that there's no rules. Like famous racers died during like they were like this one known for this dies.
Well, the best thing that came out of that was the pod racing game that we got. Yeah. Which had different planets and different vehicles.
Yes.
And if pod racing makes a comeback in Book of Boba Fett, I will not be upset.
No, I want it. Yeah, let's
Yeah.
at least have him go to a race. Like at least
he's taken over for Hutt, so
yeah.
But I would say my favorite moment in the movie is probably, I would say it's the intro sequence with on the droid ship, just because after 3 films of seeing the Jedi pretty much non-existent, you're seeing the Jedi at their peak, and I think which is really cool. So I always enjoyed that. What was your least favorite moment of the movie?
My least favorite moment in the movie is probably when Anakin says goodbye to his mom. I just hate that scene. Not because it's like overly emotional. I think it's a terrible scene. I think Anakin's acting is horrific. In every scene that I've seen in every version of the movie that I've seen, this scene is drastically overblown in editing. Mm-hmm. Like his mom is full blown orange in the scenes, and I just feel like it's just a really bad acting from all parties. Even I would say Liam Neeson, I think it's one of the worst acting performances of the movie in that scene. So yeah, I just find that is the scene that takes me out of the movie every time, where I'm like, oh, maybe I'll go get some popcorn. Or like, oh, maybe I'll go get some more. Right. Like this, like I'm over it.
For me, I would say this is gonna be a weird pick. It's the final battle.
Really?
It's too slapsticky, especially with Jar Jar in the Fields battle on Naboo. Whoop, 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 where he's juggling the energy ball around, which those energy balls are stupid, by the way.
Yeah, very.
But
dumb.
also the final, like the space battle when Anakin's flying around, it's working! Oh no, that's the pod race. No, when he's inside the hangar, and he's like, what does this button do? Bonk! And then it just shoots a missile at the one thing.
Yeah.
Like, they set up that all these he's supposed to be a good pilot, not a lucky kid who happened to get stuck in it. I don't know.
Yeah, like he's supposed to know what all those buttons do.
Yeah, or at least have some idea, and he's just like, let's try a spin. Whoa! Stupid.
Oh, I did like one thing that I did like about this movie is the all reflective ship. I think for the time that was a very bold choice, because that's very difficult to pull off. That was like CGI in its infancy for this kind of stuff, and to boldly pick a ship that is all mirror means you have to reflect every environment, and they did it, and it looks good. I mean, it holds up. I think it's still a good shot. So I think bravo to the team that designed that and went for it, because that was a ballsy move.
Absolutely. Well, let's keep moving because we have a lot of movies to get through still. What's your quick final thought and a score?
A quick final thought is this movie's not good, but it is part of the series, so go ahead and watch it. It definitely introduces a lot of characters that are needed for some much better films and for the overarching story that is fun. And because of that, I gave this movie a 65.
Okay. I said, well, it's not nearly as bad as you remember, and there are some good practical effects in this movie. It still feels so incredibly mediocre compared to the other films in this franchise. And there is just some outright bad dialogue. George, it's not that we don't understand the kind of dialogue you're trying to write. It's just terrible. So with that, I gave it a 45.
Wow.
Not as low as I think I would have given it years ago, but it is still not good. Let's move on to the next film, the fifth film, which is going to be Episode 2, Attack of the Clones. Released in 2002, it was directed by George Lucas and stars Ewan McGregor, Natalie Portman, and Hayden Christensen. 10 years after initially meeting, Anakin Skywalker shares a forbidden romance with Padme Amidala, while Obi-Wan Kenobi investigates an assassination attempt on the Senator and discovers a secret clone army crafted for the Jedi. It was nominated for 1 Oscar for Best Visual Effects. Ooh. It won 2 Razzie Awards for Worst Supporting Actor for Hayden Christensen and Worst Screenplay. It was nominated for 5 more, including Worst Picture, Worst Sequel or Remake, Worst Supporting Actress for Natalie Portman, Worst On-Screen Couple, and Worst Director.
Well, that's disappointing.
How is that disappointing?
Because when I was a kid and this movie came out in theaters, I really loved the whole concept of Clone Wars. Like, I thought that was so cool.
Yep.
Like, from the nostalgic side of me, this movie's awesome in my memory. Mm-hmm. Like, it's got so many fun things going for it, but when you do rewatch it, there's just not really much substance to any of it.
Yeah.
And I would agree with the on-screen couple being rough. Yeah. I think it's definitely a rough... The whole sand thing that's gone down in history.
I don't like sand. It's rough.
It's cool, and it gets everywhere.
It's so bad. I completely agree with all the Razzie nominations. Because this is the one Star Wars movie I refuse to watch now.
I would agree. I think this is the one that I've seen the least amount of times.
Yes.
Yeah, interesting.
It's a lot of bad dialogue. It's a lot. But I do agree. I think and I guess we'll get into my favorite moment, the end. The Clone Wars beginning is...
Oh my gosh.
Awesome.
Yeah, it's amazing. Seeing all the troops and all the battles starting, it's awesome.
But it does lead into a big problem with this movie, with this one in particular, was this over-reliance on visual effects. There is not a single physical clone armor in the movie. It's all visual effects.
Really?
There's no reason for that.
They never made one costume.
No.
Wow, I didn't know that.
Not even for the third one.
Wow.
Every clone was visual effects. I mean, they would crop in like Tamura Morrison's head.
Yeah.
But it was, oh man, it's just such an odd choice. But I just like this movie. What was your favorite moment? Because I talked about the final battle. I'm guessing that's yours as well.
Yeah, I think that would be my favorite as well. I think
the Clone War, not the
actual
battle.
war. Yeah, no, the lightsaber battle's kind of mediocre as well.
Yeah.
And I think this was that over-reliance on that Jedis needed to be really flippy in their fighting. Like, it just didn't really feel like a real fighting style. It seemed really elaborate and excessive. So that's probably my least favorite moment. Mm-hmm. Is if I had to pick an overarching one, it'd be the relationship between Anakin and Padme, and then if I had to pick one moment, it'd be the final battle. But my favorite is that all the troops, everybody going to war, and you feel it. In that scene, it's like, this is a war. Everybody is getting ready to go to battle, and no one's ready for how big this is going to be. Yeah. And it really feels grandiose and large, and it's exciting, so definitely favorite.
Absolutely. And it kind of... I hate to say, like, when the Clone Wars series is better than,
Well, that's a common... That's not a hot take. Yeah,
no, it's not a hot take, but it's amazing that the TV series that's filling in between 2 and 3 was better than...
Rebels is better than, like, almost all of these.
Than the prequel movies?
Rebels?
Okay, I haven't seen Rebels, so
that's also not a hot take. I think that's pretty common.
I would say it's a hot take to say Rebels is better than Clone Wars, but... I feel like Clone
No,
Wars
then
is more beloved.
the Clone Wars is the best. Rebels is better than the prequel movies.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I'm just saying it's better than a lot of the Star Wars films.
Yeah. So you said your least favorite moment was
Final battle, if I had to pick a
the
single
lightsaber one.
Yeah.
Gotcha. I would say it's the romance scene on Naboo.
It was mine was torn between. Yeah, it's terrible.
It's well, I'll take the other side then, because it's just awful.
Yeah.
And now when you look back and show the sequence when he picks up the apple with his hand and forces it towards her, and she and she just catches it,
and he's like,
because if you don't know if you've seen the Corridor Crew,
yes,
video
I
on
have,
where she just slurps up the slice and it goes like, it's so bad.
No, that whole scene is so pretentious to me. Like he's being so over the top with it, and she's like, "Oh, Annie," it's so bad.
It's so bad. But let's go ahead and get into some quick final thoughts because I feel like we've kind of exhausted. Unless there's anything else you want to add.
Nope.
What were your quick final thoughts and score?
Quick final thoughts are this movie lives in my brain as great, and I haven't watched it again since, so it's still great in my head. But I do know the reality of it, which is it is not a good film, and because of that, I've given it a 60.
Wow. Okay. Very interesting. I said the Attack of the Clones is poorly written, poorly acted, and it's way too reliant on VFX, except for Ian McGregor. He's always great. However, this film is, as I like to say, unfortunately important. So you do have to watch it as part of the saga.
A great term, unfortunately.
And in my first attack on Star Wars fanboys, I gave Attack of the Clones a 28.
Ooh, yeah. That's a deep slash. Wow.
Oh, yeah, no. And you're going to feel it later. We're getting there. But let's go ahead and talk about the next film, which is Revenge of the Sith. Released in 2005, it was directed by George Lucas and stars Ewan McGregor, Natalie Portman, and Hayden Christensen. 3 years into the Clone Wars, the Jedi rescue Palpatine from Count Dooku. As Obi-Wan pursues a new threat, Anakin acts as a double agent between the Jedi Council and Palpatine, and is lured into a sinister plan to rule the galaxy. It was nominated for 1 Oscar for Best Makeup, which is a weird Oscar to nominate it for.
I bet it's for the aliens in the beginning.
Maybe. Yeah, I would say so. It also won a single Razzie and was nominated for a single Razzie, and it won for worst supporting actor for Hayden Christensen again.
Dang, man, I mean, he's not the best, but give the guy a break.
Awful.
I disagree. I think he's okay. I feel like he's the character to me. Maybe I just didn't.
Maybe the character is awful.
Yeah, maybe.
Well, the character's so much better in the Clone Wars. Like
that's true. Yeah, that's true. I just think it was. You also have to think though that the reason why the series are always reviewed so much better is because they have so much longer to tell the story. Mm-hmm. Right? They're compressing that entire story into 2 hours, so it's hard. I totally get that.
No, yeah.
But this movie, I think, is the best of the prequel trilogy. And I think this movie still has a great place in my head. I've watched it a ton of times. I feel like I notice something new every time. I love the final scene on the lava planet where that's all practical. They built that miniature. Like a lot of people think that whole planet is CGI, and it's not. It just looks like that. And I just love that. I love the dynamic of the final battle. That is my all-time favorite of this series, and maybe one of my top moments of all. That internal struggle is really real feeling. And the betrayal that Anakin feels is incredible. And the betrayal that honestly that Obi-Wan feels, like they both feel it. It's absolutely devastating, and I think it's an amazing scene. So that's my favorite.
I would slightly disagree. Not because it's not impactful. And I will say I also agree that this is the best movie in the prequel trilogy. Because it's also the most dire, and you know what happens. So it's like, whoa. The final fight, though, and it is important, I still don't like the fighting style. It's way too choreographed.
Yeah, and it's all perfectly timed, like they jump from one platform to the other.
Yeah, and the moment when they're like, and they just like lash in the middle is stupid. Like, if you're this angry at each other, well, if Anakin's this angry at Obi-Wan, it'd be much more like the fight sequence in Force Awakens between Rey and Kylo.
That's what I was gonna say. They nailed it. The angry fighting later.
Yeah, like it's much more like there would have been much more emotion. Anakin is not trying to duel Obi-Wan. He's trying to kill him.
Yeah.
So like it doesn't feel like that though. So I always had problems with that scene. It's not my least favorite scene by any means, but it was, not. It's still epic in the storytelling sense. I just think not in the actual action sense.
Yeah.
My favorite moment of this movie is still the intro. The battle above Coruscant is
beautiful.
awesome. Even all the stuff on the ship with the battle droids,
The droidicas.
yeah, and all like the kind of like the moments that happen, like R2-D2's little comical moment when he lights the gasoline on fire and stuff like that. It's all great. As far as least favorite moments, though, what would if you had to have a least favorite moment? What would you say?
I think my least favorite moment is not a single moment, but the plot of this film. The overarching struggle of like the trade, the diplomatic stuff. I think it's all pretty soft. I think it's used well. I think here's what I think of it. I think it's a plot device, which I know it's the plot of the film. But I feel like it doesn't have as much weight as I think it should have.
I'm confused because the trade and negotiation stuff's in the first movie.
No, that's why they go to kill the aliens on the lava planet.
No,
That are
Palpatine sends Anakin there to kill them all to like end the war.
the war. No,
Yeah,
those are the same aliens that were in charge of the trade that started the whole thing. So yeah, maybe it is to end the war,
Yeah,
but it started because of the overarching trade plot, like the whole political thing.
Oh, I see.
I think the culmination of all of that. No, or maybe I didn't convey it right, but the whole culmination of that plot, I feel, isn't serviced well. Like, I feel like they built it up over 2 films of, like, this is all this stuff going on, so much political intrigue and betrayal in the government, and then it kind of falls apart. And, of course, the movie's focused on the duel and the betrayal of friends and stuff, but I think they... Yeah, and I think... Yeah, which is awesome point as well. But yeah, I think it's I just think it kind of falls short a little bit, and they don't do as much as they could have with the story they built. I think they kind of let it go.
Yeah, I would agree. I think the trade stuff is just incredibly stupid. As far as least favorite moment in this movie, I would say it's kind of hard to really pinpoint one moment. I would just say any of the cringy moments again between Padme and Anakin.
Which are often.
Like when Anakin's just sitting out there in his little like open shirt and he's got like all those muscles open and then like, you know, Padme comes around like, what's going on? Like it's just, it doesn't feel genuine. It just feels awful. But Hayden Christensen's also like the low point of this trilogy for me. I'm sorry. I know you disagree, but...
I don't think he's amazing. I just don't know if he's like the low point. I think there's a lot of things that were bad and good. I feel like he was just very lukewarm, very neutral.
We'll see. Hopefully he does well in Obi-Wan Kenobi. That's all I can say.
He was good in Jumper, which we reviewed on this podcast.
Well, I disagree, but all right.
You didn't like him in Jumper either. That's right.
But let's go ahead and give quick final thoughts and move on because we still have 5 movies to get through after this. So, I guess I'll give mine first then. We're at the halfway point. For Revenge of the Sith, I think it's definitely stronger than the previous 2, and it's crucially important to the story, but a lot of the criticisms I've had about the previous 2 carry over to this one. You know, the somewhat dated-looking visual effects, the bad dialogue, but this movie is important, and because of that, I gave it a 63.
Nice. I gave this a 78. I think it is very close to how I feel about the 6th movie. I feel like it's very impactful to me. I remember a lot of it. I think it's entertaining, just not the best, and falls short in quite a few areas. So, yeah.
All right. Moving right along. We're starting with the sequel trilogy. This is the era where Disney has owned the franchise. The 7th film is Episode 7. Wow, interesting. The Force Awakens. Released in 2015, it was directed by J.J. Abrams and stars Daisy Ridley, John Boyega, and Oscar Isaac. As a new threat to the galaxy rises, Rey, a desert scavenger, and Finn, an ex-stormtrooper, must join Han Solo and Chewbacca to search for the one hope of restoring peace. It was nominated for 5 Oscars, including Best Film Editing, Best Original Score, Best Sound Mixing, Best Sound Editing, and Best Visual Effects. After the prequel trilogy, this was such a welcome experience in the theater.
Yeah, I think it was A New Hope 2.0.
Yeah.
I mean, but they used the tried and true formula. A lot of people knocked them for kind of following a similar storyline, but it's like, I mean, this is where I think we both have similar takes, and this is the most heated conversation that a lot of Star Wars fans have. But what do you want, right? Do you want that experience of watching the original trilogy again? Because that's what they tried to give you. And then you also complained that it was too like the original films. But whenever they try to make a departure, you're upset that they make too much of a departure. So pick what you want. Or are you just not happy with Star Wars anymore? I think this is where I really started to kind of step away from the Star Wars fandom community and just like the movies on my own. Because I think the community got extremely toxic when this movie came out.
Yep.
And very divisive and I did not enjoy it anymore. So
It wasn't so much this movie as the next one.
I would disagree. I think the next one lit the flame, but this added all the fuel to the fire. I think
I would disagree. I think even most people I talk to who don't like Last Jedi liked this one.
I feel like a lot of people don't like both. I feel like a lot of people thought this was a cop out, and they just basically remade A New Hope because it was a safe bet.
Interesting. I haven't heard that take.
Well, here it is. It's
Well,
nice and hot.
I've heard that it's
Served
similar.
fresh.
I've heard people saying it's similar. Oh, thank you.
Served fresh.
Take that. Thank you. But I think this movie's a lot of fun.
I do too. Yeah.
I like the new characters. I like the new settings. I like Rey as a character. Sorry.
Me too.
I just do. It's a little unfortunate we didn't get a lot of Poe in this movie because I think Poe kind of comes into his own later. But again, like it's a fun movie. It was like watching the original trilogy, one of them, for the first time. It was like seeing something that had that same love and affection put into it.
That's because it was the first movie, just reskinned basically.
Well, it has its differences, but it's not like right on. Yes, there's a giant floating ball in space they have to go and blow up.
The pacing of the film is identical.
Well, it's because it worked the first time.
Well, yes, I agree. I like this movie a lot. I thought
They're
it was
also making it for a new generation. So
exactly. But but all the diehard fans so I'm not going to hash on this too much, but a lot of the diehard fans were saying like, I wanted a new movie and you just re-gave me an old movie that I like, so I like that one better, so I don't like this one. That was a lot of what I heard. But I really thought this was a refreshing return to Star Wars. I thought it was a big spectacle movie. I thought it had a lot of really nice graphics and CGI, and I thought the story was obviously, very similar, but entertaining and engaging and easy to follow for a lot of new fans. It didn't rely too much on previous knowledge. Like, you could kind of just go and watch it, which I thought was really, really a good move to introduce a lot of people to Star Wars again. So I really like this movie.
Yeah, I really enjoy it. I think it's a lot of fun. There are some complaints that I have in terms of it, being a little similar to the original, like with the final battle being straight from A New Hope. And there is a little bit of the J.J. Abrams like visual quality to it. A lot of the lens flares, and there are some stylistic decisions which I don't feel like are characteristic of Star Wars, but it's not the same director, so I can't fault it too much for that. And I remember that reveal. Spoiler alert, by the way, if no one's seen this one. I'll spoiler this one because it's somewhat newer. When Snoke reveals that Kylo Ren is Han and Leia's child. Holy shit. In theater, that was like, whoa.
Yeah, that was a great reveal. And Kylo Ren is also, I'll start now, my favorite character from the trilogy.
Definitely. He has
okay, cool. Wasn't sure if it was the hot take. I think he's the main character. I would argue that.
Yeah. I could see that. I would say he and Rey are the two main characters.
I think what would have been I'll wait till till we get to the final movie to talk about that. But yeah, I think the final scene in the woods, awesome scene when he's reaching for the lightsaber and you think it's going to be him and it flies right past him.
And goes to Rey.
And Rey, oh my gosh. Such a cool moment.
Yeah. It was great.
Yeah. Some huge payoffs in this movie.
That's my favorite moment too, actually. That whole final sequence in the woods is great.
And then the whole ground splits. Like, what a great final scene.
Oh yeah, it's fantastic.
Yeah.
Least favorite moment in the movie though.
For me, it's when big-eyed little lady,
Oh, Maz Kanata.
Maz Kanata, just happens to have Luke's lightsaber in storage. It just all feels really convenient. Like, let's just move this plot along. It just kind of all felt like, oh, we haven't heard of any of this before, but now here we are, and here's what you need, and here's the vision, and here's all this stuff.
A little convenient. Yeah.
A little convenient, and kind of the whole movie felt that way, which we'll run into later as well. That there's definitely convenient, let's just move the plot along moments in this sequel trilogy. But great movie. I really, really like this movie.
Awesome. Well, I would say my least favorite moment is probably the Rathtar stuff on Han and Chewie's like scavenger frigate that they have.
Yeah.
It just kind of felt pointless.
Felt gimmicky. Like, oh, here's a little runaround moment. Like,
Hey,
let's
we have
do
cool
this.
visual effects now. Here we go. Here's a cool looking creature.
This is... Yeah, this is the one with the traitor scene, right? Where they're outside on the planet.
Traitor!
That scene is so good. When he flips the weapon out. And he's like,
gosh, yes.
Oh, iconic.
Iconic moment.
Oh, and also that a non-Jedi wields a lightsaber. Hello.
And does a decent job.
And yeah, that was pretty mind-blowing.
Yeah, he held his own for a couple minutes against Kylo Ren, so...
Oh, I got to talk about this first, because I'm a big fan of demonstrations of powerful Force users. And the opening scene of this film, where Kylo Ren stops a laser blaster in midair, sold me on this film immediately. I think stuff like that is what I want to see in my Star Wars movies. Like, I want to see things that I've seen happen a ton of times, but happen differently. I've seen blasters, but I'm saying I've seen blasters fire, and no one's ever stopped one. They've missed, they've been deflected, but to literally stop a laser in midair was oh shoot. Mm-hmm. This guy is powerful. So I love stuff like that. I think this movie did a lot. I think it takes a lot of the best things from A New Hope and refines them and makes a new generation and a new movie, and I think it's great. So, I'll give my final thought, I guess. Mm-hmm. So, I gave this movie an 89. These are... I'll just start it right now. This is one of my favorite in probably... I'll say this, top 4. No, top 5. I'll say top 5.
All right. I say, well, it has similarities to the original. I think Force Awakens is still a blast and brings the franchise into a new generation. And brings us some really fun characters. And because of that, I gave it an 82.
Nice.
Pretty strong.
Still pretty close. Yeah, still
pretty close. Let's move on to the one that's probably going to get us the most death threats in our emails, which is the 8th film, The Last Jedi. Released in 2017, it was directed by Rian Johnson and stars Daisy Ridley, John Boyega, and Oscar Isaac. The Star Wars saga continues as new heroes and galactic legends go on an epic adventure unlocking mysteries of the Force and shocking revelations of the past. It was nominated for 4 Oscars, including Best Visual Effects, Best Original Score, Best Sound Mixing, and Best Sound Editing. Are you ready for the hate mail?
Yes, and I'm ready to start off with the hottest take of all. Or maybe not, but my hot take.
Let's lay it on me. Let's go.
I think Finn should have died in this movie.
That's not what I was expecting to hear, but okay.
I think this movie would have been elevated in everybody's book to favorite status had Finn died at the end of this movie.
Really? Why do you say that?
Because I think this entire prequel trilogy struggles with commitment to things. Sequel trilogy.
You said prequel.
Oh, sorry. Sequel trilogy. P and an S, you know. Close in alphabet. Kind of. But I think it struggles with commitment. I think none of it has weight. I think that a lot of these movies, they show you something and then they immediately go back on what they did moments later. And I think this movie would have had a lot more weight to it if they had set the precedent that main characters can die. And I think that it would have added a ton of heavy undertones to this movie, and it would have wrapped up and set up a great final installment without Finn. I like John Boyega. I think he's a great actor. I'm not saying I didn't want him in the film. I just think, kind of like Han Solo, Harrison Ford wanted Han to die a lot, like throughout every film he's in. And I think if Finn had died, it would have added a lot of weight to the movie.
Interesting. I had never thought about that, and I don't know if I agree, but I think I have to give it a little bit more thought.
Watch that scene again, and then try to picture if you hadn't seen
Rise of
Skywalker, and imagine if that was how you left the theater and Finn was dead. Like, I don't know. I think it would have been... Yeah, I think it would have been great.
Well, I think the death that leaves an impact is a different character, but we'll get there in a minute. Are you ready for my hot take?
Sure.
I think it might be the same. I don't know if it's the same hot take you have. This is the best film in the sequel trilogy.
Yeah, I'd agree. It's the top two of the sequel. Yeah, I like two of them a lot.
What I would say, and I was talking to someone about, I think I was actually talking to your friend Joey about this. So shout out to Joey when we were at your party over the weekend. He was very much the opposite, viewpoint. He was one of the people that walked out of the theater angry.
Yeah, he and I talk about it all the time. This really let him down.
Which I actually got him to agree that this is a good film.
Yeah.
Whether or not it's a good Star Wars movie is the part that's debatable.
Yeah. Well, that's what a lot of people said, yeah.
Yes, this movie's well paced, it's well written, even though there is an entire part of this movie that I don't feel was very necessary.
The casino?
Yeah, it was very cool, but it wasn't necessary.
Yeah.
Like, the design, of everything felt really cool.
Yeah.
But, and that kind of forced plot line where it's like, someone's got to profit off all these wars, and it's kind of like they're putting a deeper political narrative into it, which I didn't necessarily agree with.
Yeah.
That aside, all the stuff with Luke and Rey, I'm sorry, is great. This is the best. I love Luke in this movie.
Yeah, I agree.
He's flawed. He's not the ubermensch hero that everyone thinks he is. Yes,
well, and he never wanted to be one.
Exactly. He was a whiny piece of shit. So, this is like the final evolution of that character, and he has an arc in this movie. He's not this old crotchety guy the whole movie. At the end, he realizes he was wrong.
Yeah, and I think a lot of people, speaking of the end, have a lot of heartburn with, he wasn't even there. It wasn't even that big of a finale. He wasn't... But you have to understand the strength to physically force project... He was physically there. He gave Leia Han's dice.
Yeah.
He physically transported himself across the galaxy.
Yeah.
And fought Kylo Ren in another planet.
But do you know how big of a bitch slap that was? When he's like, oh, by the way, yeah, I'm not even here. And then just disappears. And Kylo's like, what?
Well, because he knew that Kylo was angry. He knew that his presence would make Kylo go crazy.
Exactly.
And I love the little hints that you can tell that he's using his old lightsaber. And there's a bunch of, he doesn't leave footprints on the ground. Kylo does.
Yep.
But Luke doesn't. There's so many little details where when you watch it again, you're like, oh, you can, they paid attention. It wasn't a throwaway scene. There's a lot going on there. I loved it. Yeah, it's
and just
great.
After all the blasters fire at him, just that one shoulder. God, it's so good.
So actually, I think the shoulder shrug was a little
on the nose.
It was on the nose, and it was very current humor. I think they were trying to be like, this is what the kids like the braggadocious. I don't know about
that.
I felt like it was really.
I feel like that was been doing that in movies for a long time. But
not in Star Wars.
Getting the jacket or shredding off the shoulders. I don't feel like that's a new thing.
But I think the way that his facial expression while doing it was very
fair.
That's what I didn't like.
Well, okay, let's go ahead and because we gotta move on. Favorite moment of the movie.
Favorite moment of the movie is Favorite moment of the movie is where. Oh, but it's okay. This is how good of a movie I think this was. My favorite and least favorite moment are the same thing.
Oh, okay.
So my favorite moment of this movie is where Finn is going to sacrifice himself. I think they build up that scene so much. Everyone in the theater that I saw that with was holding their breath. It was like, this is it. Like, he has to do it in order for them to survive. And then the fact that frickin' Rose comes out of nowhere and knocks his ship out of the way and saves him is the worst thing that happens in this whole movie. I hate Rose. I think she served as a useless character. I'm sorry, and I know that's why they wrote her out of the next one, because everybody hated her so much.
There's still no excuse to force her offline from all social media and send her death threats.
Oh, I agree. I think the community... Yeah. That's why I said I pulled myself away from the community. I didn't like her, but I would never comment on it. Like, I would never... She's still a great actress. She just had a really toxic role in the movie that I liked. So, yeah, I think that... I just think it simultaneously is one of the greatest scenes from the sequel trilogy, is the sacrifice moment, and it's also the worst when the sacrifice is taken away from us. So that is my best and worst.
Gotcha. I would say my favorite moment is a lot of the stuff going on with Rey, particularly when she's in that cave and she sees like the reflections of herself. And
underneath when she goes down under the island, yeah.
Yeah, I thought those were really cool. Also, the dyad moments between Kylo and Rey, building that connection was really smart.
Oh, shirtless Kylo, you mean?
Oh yeah, where he's just like it's up to here, like above his nipples or whatever. But least favorite moment would probably be just the entire casino stuff. I thought it was just kind of pointless. Again, cool designs, but like it took us away from the movie. So.
Another thing that I really liked is Throne Room.
The battle?
Yes.
Even though it's poorly choreographed?
Well, yeah. I mean, they could have done better. There's a lot of people spinning their weapons in the back for no reason. But more the scene...
Corridor Crew episode on that.
There is. More the scene with the lightsaber. And this is why I think this movie was great, because I think it really set a precedent for let's leave the past behind.
Mm-hmm.
And literally, Kylo Ren is pulling at the lightsaber going like, you have to let the past die. And I think they literally were setting this up like, you have to let go of the original trilogy and the prequel trilogy. This is a new Star Wars. And Rey is trying to hold on. There's literally a fight in the audience. Like, you're watching it. There's the internal battle of you comparing it. And the film is literally telling you, like, let it go. Mm-hmm. And then when the lightsaber just completely shatters is incredible.
Oh, yeah. And then it gets fixed later.
Yeah, exactly. That was my whole commitment thing. Like, they literally just rewrote every impactful thing that happened. Mm. But speaking of from the seventh movie where he stops the laser, I wish when they kill Snoke, right, when they're turning the lightsaber and he's like, I am turning to face my enemy, and that whole scene, and then the lightsaber shoots out. Mm-hmm. To me, Snoke was portrayed as very weak in this movie, and I think it would have added a ton to me personally if he had stopped the lightsaber halfway from cutting him. Because no one's ever stopped a lightsaber from coming out. And I think that would have showed a lot of power of, like, I'm doing this, but I stop it before it touches me, and it only comes out like a quarter. Yeah, I thought that would have been really, really cool.
That was a really surprising moment, though, in theaters. You're like, oh, wait. Okay. He's gone now.
You could see him turning it. You knew it was going to happen.
No, I know. It was just like, I wasn't expecting that. I was expecting it in the third movie, not the second one. But, anywho, let's go ahead and quick final thoughts and score so we can get through the last three movies.
Okay.
What'd you get for your quick thoughts?
My quick thoughts are this is probably my second or third favorite movie out of all the Star Warses. I really, really like this movie. I think it took a lot of bold direction. I think it made a lot of commitments that were positive for making a new Star Wars. I think it gets knocked a lot for trying so many new things, but I think it was a great movie. And because of that, I gave this movie an 88.
Wow. All right. We're pretty close. I think that it's, whether or not Last Jedi is a good Star Wars movie is up for debate. But as a film by itself, I think it's far superior than people would typically get it credit for. I think it's the best movie in the trilogy, and I think Rian Johnson is getting a lot of undue hate thrown his way. It's not his fault. I don't think that this was taken the wrong way. 'Cause look how good Knives Out was, and he did that.
Looking forward to the second one.
But because of that, I gave The Last Jedi an 85.
Nice, we're pretty close.
Pretty close. We'll see about this one, though. The next movie is The Rise of Skywalker, which is Episode 9, released in 2019. It was directed by J.J. Abrams and stars Daisy Ridley, John Boyega, and Oscar Isaac. In the riveting conclusion of the landmark Skywalker saga, new legends will be born, and the final battle for freedom is yet to come. It was nominated for 3 Oscars, including Best Visual Effects, Best Original Score, and Best Sound Editing. This movie is very, very disappointing compared to the other two. Compared to Last Jedi and Force Awakens?
I think it's better than Force Awakens.
Do you really?
Mm-hmm.
Really?
Yeah.
This is going to be the most interesting discussion of this entire thing. What makes you say that, Adrian?
Yeah, interview me. Let's find out.
So, instead of being like, how could you like it? No. Like, what makes this movie so positive for you?
So, I'll start off with that I totally understand the negatives of the throwaway, let's bring Palpatine back. Like, they definitely needed to find all...
The meme-worthy line.
Yeah, where he's like...
he's returned.
Somehow. Yeah, that's literally how Palpatine returns to the universe, is somehow he's returned. Yeah. But I think the dyad and the Force stuff is absolutely incredible. I think the Knights of Ren don't get the time they deserve, but super cool to see them on screen. And honestly, I think this entire film is saved by Rey's final battle. To me, that whole final concept is really cool. To me, I get that it doesn't make sense why these ships would all be tied to one computer and all that stuff. Like, I get all the nitpicking, but to me, the battle itself is really cool. Like, they literally do a land invasion on a ship in the air. Like, just and again, there's a lot of nitpicking you can do for this movie. Like, okay, well, how are they breathing? Like, why are they in atmosphere? Like, there's all this stuff, and I get that. But I went to the movie to enjoy a fun Star Wars movie. And I feel like this movie really delivers on some of those grand scopes of, like, really cool visuals and really cool battles. So, I liked it. And when everyone shows up at the end, you can't tell me that's not absolutely awesome.
No, it's great.
Cool. Well, thanks for joining the podcast, everyone. We'll be back next week.
My biggest problem with the movie is, number one, it gets too apologetic for The Last Jedi.
Well, that's what I'm saying. They correct a lot. Yeah, it's terrible.
It's a lot of retconning, which I don't like.
Yeah.
Especially with Luke, which
Yeah.
I feel like his arc was better in Last Jedi. Also, this movie is rushed. The first half hour is so rough. The editing is bad. It's just like one thing after another. Don't even pay attention. We're just gonna keep on going.
Yeah.
It was just bad. I remember.
Well, and they also had to use Leia's previously recorded scenes because she passed away.
Which it totally worked. I did not know that was unused.
It worked pretty well. You can tell when you watch. Once you know, you can kind of tell that the conversations are like curated to the lines that were already recorded, but it works super well.
Yeah, that part works. Yeah, it's just this movie felt rushed. The fact that it was too apologetic for the differences that Rise of Skywalker, that Last Jedi was trying to make, and then also it just, yes, the final battle's cool. The part with Rey versus Palpatine with Ben is awesome. Their fight on the Death Star wreckage is awesome.
And that's kind of that angry fighting we were talking about, where Kylo Ren is furious.
Mm-hmm.
And he's not focused on style or, like, there's no nuance to his fighting. It's just anger.
Yeah.
Oh, but that scene where she drops the lightsaber and then catches it and brings it back. It's awesome. Not the final one. I'm talking about when they're fighting and she drops her own lightsaber and catches it in her other hand, and then brings it back up for the fight. Just a cool scene.
Oh, yeah.
You were thinking of the dyad in the
where
Force
he takes
one.
it out.
Yeah.
That moment's really good, too.
Yeah.
Also, the moment when Palpatine just shoots his hands up in that sound design where it's like... that's awesome, too. But I feel like they're trying to go for this epic tone, especially in the last act. And it almost feels like they're trying to do their own version of, like, the end game, like, everyone's here kind of a thing.
Well,
And
I think that's definitely what they were trying to do.
it doesn't work for me.
So I will say I did see, and I think I showed this to you, but I saw a version of this final scene that I think would have made this movie a lot better. Which is when they're fighting. Right, it's supposed to be in thought is Rey is embodying all of the Jedi and all the Force power.
Oh yeah. Mm-hmm.
And Palpatine is embodying all the Sith that came before him. Like, this is the both sides, everybody meeting head to head in this fight. But in this alternate version I've seen, they have the Force ghosts of all the previous Jedi behind her that all give her power. They all stick their hand out. And I think that little change, I wish I could have the movie and just splice in that scene. Because I think it adds a lot of visual weight to us watching to understand that this isn't just Rey, an untrained Jedi, beating a Sith Lord. This is her being helped by all the Force in the universe in order to do this. Like, she's not just doing it on her own. So I think it could have definitely been helped and been better, but I definitely think they were trying to do an end game thing, 100%.
Yeah, it just didn't work all the way for me, I don't think. And just there felt like a lot of like throwaway moments in this movie too, like the complete illogical dagger that has the map of
plot
the wreckage.
Device, yeah, that somehow
Literally,
after thousands of years fits perfectly.
Well, it was like 30 years, 40 years, yeah, not that long, but like that was stupid. The fake out with Chewie.
Well, that's kind of the commitment thing. Like, he's dead, and then 2 minutes later, they couldn't even give you 10 minutes.
Yeah, I don't know. It just didn't work.
And C-3PO, they wipe his brain and he gets it back.
Yeah,
like that had so much weight. He's like, I'm just saying goodbye. But I'm taking one last look at my friends, and you're like, damn, like, he's gone. And then at the end, they're like, oh yeah, I had a backup. It's me, brother. I'm still here, baby.
What's going on? he's like a frat boy now. But as far
he's
as
like,
go ahead.
No, I was just gonna say it's like he's at Mardi Gras. Like, he's just like, hey,
throwing beads out, little like resistance logos on it. Like, yay! Here you go. Favorite moment of the movie, so we can move on.
Favorite moment of the movie is when everybody shows up. I think they did a great job of setting it up that this is not going to work. Okay. This plan will fail. Mm-hmm. And I think it really feels like it. There is a lot of uncertainty that everybody will pull through. And then when everyone shows up, and the fact that they include ships from Clone Wars and Rebels and like all these like way deep lore ships show up for the fight. And the fact that we get Lando and Chewie flying the Falcon, and everyone's there. It's such a feel-good moment of like, we can do this, and I think that's amazing. I love that scene.
Absolutely. My favorite moment would probably be the dyad stuff at the end.
Yeah,
the fight with Ben, who's redeemed now, and he holds a blue lightsaber. Again, makes him the best character in the trilogy. And then worst moment for you?
Worst moment would probably be the whole thing with, what is her name? It starts with a Z. Poe's friend.
Oh, the romantic interest?
Yeah, that whole thing is super dumb to me. And, like, she's not going to help, but then suddenly they talk once, and she's like, yes, I'll help you. Like, I just think that whole scene is super rushed and doesn't make any sense, and I think it would have been better if they didn't include that character. I just think they could have added more depth to other characters instead. So, yeah, least favorite is that whole dynamic.
Gotcha. I would say it's just the entire rushed first, 30 minutes of this movie.
Yeah, which I think that's when my thing happens. Like, it's just not...
Yeah. It's just like...
Yeah.
It's so fast. It's breakneck, almost. So final thought score real quick before we move on to the two supplemental films.
Score, I think this one is better than the first, or the seventh movie, the first of the sequel trilogy. I think it has a lot better of a third act than the other one, but it doesn't edge out Last Jedi as favorite of the sequel trilogy. I think it just struggles with commitment and pacing quite a bit more than The Last Jedi did. I think they would have been better to stick with what The Last Jedi laid down. And proceeded with that plot line instead of completely retconning an entire film and acting like it didn't exist. So because of that, I give this movie an 85. I definitely think it's still up there, and I really enjoy it. I think the trailer is... I have the trailer saved on my phone because I love the trailer for this movie so much. The first one? The final trailer.
Oh, yeah, okay.
Because it has the reprise of the Star Wars theme that wasn't used in the movie.
Mm-hmm.
And it's got, like, all the trumpets playing the whole, like, peak of the song, and it's so good. I literally... Cassidy probably sees me watch it, like, once a month. I just love it. I love the trailers so much.
Gotcha. I said, as a conclusion to the Skywalker saga, this film feels rushed and poorly written, but it still retains the necessary beats and the things that make it a Star Wars film. You know, the battles and all that. I gave Rise of Skywalker a 52. It's just very poor, in my opinion, compared to the other two. Still, would rather watch it than most of the prequel trilogy. So,
and Jar Jar Binks.
Yeah, exactly. That racist caricature. All right, cool. Moving on. The 10th film is Rogue One, A Star Wars Story. Released in 2016, it was directed by Gareth Edwards and stars Felicity Jones, Ben Mendelsohn, and Diego Luna. In a time of conflict, a group of unlikely heroes band together on a mission to steal the plans to the Death Star, the Empire's ultimate weapon of destruction. It was nominated for 2 Oscars, including Best Sound Mixing and Best Visual Effects. And I will just go out and say that this is probably my favorite film in the franchise.
Whoa!
Tied with Empire Strikes Back for favorite status.
Yeah.
Empire's still the best film. This is one of my favorite. Purely because it's a ground-level Star Wars movie with no Jedi in it. Yep. And apart from the opening, which is a little slow, with like the brain sucker thing, and the stuff that's on Jeddah. Once you get off of Jeddah, this movie is incredible. The entire battle with Scarif in space and on the ground is the best Star Wars, like, in my opinion. Like, that's what?
I was going to say, you know why? Because they lose. I mean, they win, but they lose.
Yes. Like, it shows flaw. Like, it's just perfectly done. And
well, it shows the sacrifice required. Like, it showed, like, we lost all the main characters in order for this movie to take place. And I think that's what made this movie so good, is that there was no... I mean, the happy ending was, you got the plans, but there was no happy ending for our characters.
Yes. And that final Darth Vader sequence
lines up literally seconds with the first movie.
You actually see how powerful he is, because he's never powerful in the original trilogy.
No, he's literally throwing people and, like, killing them in midair.
Swiping them, and, like, it's so good. Anyhow, what are your opinions on the movie?
I really like this movie as well. I think it's definitely in my top 5, for sure. I just love, like you said, how grounded it is. 1, in actual reality, but 2, in just that the characters, like, it's all land battle. There are people that can't fly ships. It's literally an assault, and it's a suicide mission. And you know it from the beginning, and you feel it. It doesn't feel... Like, you feel like there's a chance they might get out. You're hoping. So when they finally say, like, we can't get you out, that hits you so hard. And the characters are like, they all take a moment, and then they go like, okay, we got to keep going. And I'll tell you this right now. My favorite moment in the whole movie is K2S2?
K2SO.
K2SO. When he is at the table and he has to lock the door behind them, and he tells Jin, and he goes like, you continue to surprise me, or he said, or like, you continue to amaze me. Now
your behavior is continually unexpected.
Yes, and that's him saying like you, because he hates her in the beginning. He does not like her at all. And she continues to surprise him, and I just love that kind of final send off before he smashes the console and dies. Like, he's literally giving her like the nod of like, we're friends, like, we're good. Yeah, it's such a to make a robot have that much like emotional depth and range is pretty incredible.
Yeah, and the comically kind of bad guy that Ben Mendelsohn plays. Like, everyone's just watching the explosion happen in the distance. Like, deploy the garrison, and everyone's like, oh yeah, we have a job. That's so good. I love that.
But that's totally, like, if you're in the middle of a battle and that's your day job, like, if I'm at the office and an explosion goes off, I'm going to be like, whoa. And then someone would happen. Yeah, I have to respond to that. Let me.
It's such a good movie. So your favorite moment, you said, was
when K2SO sacrifices himself, and destroys it, because I just think it's really heartwarming, and again, for a robot to give that much depth is really, really incredible to me.
Yeah, absolutely. I could go with the Darth Vader moment being obviously my favorite iconic, moment. Yeah. I would say my favorite moment is still when the Rebel fleet arrives and you see some of the starfighter pilots and they're the same squad leaders as they are in A New Hope.
Yep.
It's so good.
Yeah, they tied it in perfectly.
As far as worst moment though, or least favorite moment, what would you say?
Least favorite moment? Man, that's tough. This might be my movie that I don't have a least favorite moment. I would say it's all the stuff with, I guess with the mind-sucking worm thing.
That's mine too.
It's just kind of, but the scene when that planet gets attacked is awesome. When the whole freaking planet gets destroyed. Mm-hmm. That's really cool. But I do want, before you talk about your least favorite scene, I do have to... Okay, cool. So we're tied there. But I do want to shout out Cassidy's favorite scene where the blind man, literally, they're like, do this. And he's like, the guards are telling him to do stuff. And he's like, I'm blind. Like, I can't do that.
No, like they put the bag over his head and he's like, why are you doing that? I'm blind.
That's Cassidy's favorite scene. She loves that so much.
Well, that being said, quick thoughts and a score for Rogue One.
Quick thoughts. I give this movie an 86. I definitely think it's up there with the top for me. I think it's great. It's definitely one that I would recommend to people, especially as a standalone. And canonically, I think it's a great intro because I showed Cassidy all the movies in timeline order. Mm-hmm. And I think starting with such a powerful movie before, kind of in the very beginning of this episode, I said starting with A New Hope is a little rough if you've never seen any of them. Mm-hmm. It can feel kind of boring. But starting with Rogue One, getting all that set up, and then diving into New Hope, understanding how they got the plans, because they don't explain it in A New Hope. So this is a defining backbone to the entire franchise, and starting with it is incredible, and I cannot recommend it enough. It's a great movie.
Absolutely. I think Rogue One is an incredible prequel to A New Hope. Like, nice. It leads literally right up to it. And it really sets the stage for the events that follow it through great characters and awesome visuals. I think this is going to be another interesting one because I gave it a 90. Nice. I really love this movie.
It's a good movie.
Once you kind of get past the first 30 minutes, everything else is fantastic. All right, this is going to bring us to our last film for the day, which is Solo, a Star Wars story. Released in 2018, it was directed by Ron Howard and stars Alden Ehrenreich, Amelia Clarke, and Woody Harrelson. Board the Millennium Falcon and journey to a galaxy far, far away in an epic action-adventure that will set the course of one of the Star Wars saga's most unlikely heroes. It was nominated for 1 Oscar for Best Visual Effects. This is the only movie that I actually had to rewatch for this because I saw it in theaters, and not that I was avoiding it or anything, I just didn't watch it again until we had to do this. Sure. And upon rewatching it, I like this movie.
Me too. I liked it when I left the theaters. I know it was pretty controversial, but I liked it.
I wouldn't say it was controversial. I think it was one of the first ones where everyone was kind of like, it was good.
Like, yeah, it's okay.
Not great.
Yeah, not divisive by any means or anything, but just good.
Yeah, I think that this was nice kind of interim between Last Jedi and Rise of Skywalker, because it was kind of like, okay, so there are people at Lucasfilm who still kind of understand what we want for those fans that were upset. We'll talk more about that next week, because we have our big hot take episode next week where we can go more in depth. But yeah, I think this is like, as a summer blockbuster, because this is the only Star Wars movie that didn't come out during Christmas time. And this one came out in May. It was delayed, actually. This one was a lot of fun. I think Alden Ehrenreich was a great fit for Han Solo.
Yeah, I know a lot of people really wanted it to be the guy from Age of Adeline that played young Harrison Ford. Because he literally impersonated Harrison Ford and like submitted his acting reel and everything, and it's pretty darn good. But I think the actor did a great job. I think he really felt like while not being Harrison Ford, felt like a young Harrison Ford.
Yeah.
I really felt like Han in his youth. Like it really embodied that energy and that recklessness that turned him into who he was. And I think, had I seen this before I saw The Empire Strikes Back, I would have understood Han's arrogance and character more because of knowing what he's been through. So again, watching them canonically or chronologically, I think is well worth it. I think you get a lot more out of the characters later on if you watch them. But I really liked Emilia Clarke in this movie too. I think she did a great job. Kind of the whole double backstabbing plot twist stuff was really, really cool.
Yeah.
And just the adventure scenes, like the whole train heist scene.
It was awesome.
Yeah, really fun. Underrated for sure. Just a really exciting action movie. Oh, and the whole why you find out how Lando cheated to win the card game is super fun.
Oh yeah.
And
little wrist.
Yeah, like that's a super fun little Easter egg for people that love the franchise. And then how the Falcon ran the Kessel Run in 11 parsecs or 12 parsecs. It makes so much sense that they cheated. Like it just fits the characters so much that it was such a good payoff. Instead of it being like, oh, it is just plain fast enough. It's like, no, Han Solo, the biggest cheat in the galaxy. He cheated. Like it's perfect.
So let's go ahead and address. I think there's a couple of odd choices in this movie. How do you feel about L3? It was the robot companion of Lando.
Oh, played by who was she?
Phoebe Waller-Bridge.
I thought it was okay. I think it was definitely they were trying to do what KSO did, like that was the comedic or supposed to be companion. Yeah, like a comedic kind of break for the film, and I feel like a lot of it went unnoticed by me. Like I feel like a lot of it fell really flat. Like I get that there were jokes, but I feel like that just felt more like, okay, that's that part. Now let's keep going.
There were two things that specifically bugged me. Number one is they injected politics into it.
Yes.
Like, oh, droids have rights. Like, okay, like we go to Star Wars to escape. I don't want to have to like face, mirrors of real world stuff in these kind of movies.
Yeah.
So that was kind of annoying. Also, the weird, like, it's kind of weird that there's a romance between her and Lando, which like.
I didn't mind.
I guess a droid-human romance is like it's possible. Like I guess because if anything, just droids would be asexual because they can still feel love, but they can't like.
Yeah, and I think like you spend so much time with someone, like if they have that AI sentience to them, that's definitely bound to happen. I didn't mind that actually. I kind of, to me, I guess in a subtle way, like a subconscious way, it expanded the universe of like, oh yeah, there's all kinds of stuff that goes on. Like, you never know. So I didn't mind that too much. I mean, I get that it's kind of odd, but didn't really take away from it.
I'm not saying necessarily it was bad. I'm just saying it was an odd choice. But also, when you think about it, because she and Lando had this really good relationship going, that when she's eventually made into part of the ship, and you look at the original trilogy and why it keeps giving Han problems, but it may have worked just fine for Lando.
That's exactly what that was. Yeah, it's because she didn't like Han.
Yeah. It was just it's just such a cool kind of Easter egg, I guess, for fans to realize.
And that's why Han treats it like it's a being. Yeah. He talks about the Millennium Falcon like it's a real, like it's got a personality because it does.
Yeah.
So he's like, oh, she's always giving me troubles, or like she always does this because he knows it. He knows who it is.
But also, my biggest complaint with this movie, and it's a lot of fun. It's a great movie. It's more of a blockbuster than your typical Star Wars movie.
I would say maybe one of the more but like, yeah, definitely. Yeah. That was its purpose.
More of your summer kind of movie.
Yeah.
This movie doesn't really feel like it needs to exist.
Agreed. I think they forced the tie-in at the end.
Well, the tie-in I actually really like.
No, I do too, but I think the movie itself, like, it could have been completely different to tie it in better. I think it just felt like, and now it's involved.
But I think what I'm getting at, though, is that I would have liked Solo's backstory to be more of a mystery. Because he's kind of like that, it doesn't matter what I did before, who I am now is important, right? That I like that. And again, I like the movie a lot. I think it's a lot of fun, but I just don't think it's necessary. Like, to get all this information.
I don't know. I feel like they really addressed a lot of the stuff about Han. That I mean, yeah, I get the whole mystery is cool thing, but like the whole reason that Han shoots first now
Mm-hmm.
because he was burned in the past. Like it showed us all that without outright telling us.
Even though
Like
Han didn't shoot first in the special editions or whatever, but
but in the real one,
he did shoot
he
first.
did. It is confirmed.
Yep.
And this movie tells you why because he didn't shoot first once,
Mm-hmm.
and it was really bad.
Yeah.
And this movie doesn't. Again, it doesn't say like, oh my gosh, what's his name? Woody Harrelson doesn't tell Han like you should always shoot first. He teaches him by shooting it. Like
Yeah.
it's I think there's a lot. I feel like it was. I liked it. I like that it exists. I think it was necessary.
Sure.
I feel like I wanted to know more about Han.
Fair enough. Well, let's go ahead and drop real quick. Favorite moment of the movie?
Favorite moment of the movie is probably the Kessel Run sequence. I think it's super fun to watch that play out. Followed shortly by the whole train heist sequence. I think that was really cool too. Least favorite is probably the whole conversation with I forget her name, but the redhead, like the soft villain of the movie.
Oh, Enfys Nest.
Yeah, I thought that was kind of whatever.
Sure. I
So
would agree on that one. That one's it's kind of forced. Like there's something like a rebellion, and it's like, okay, cool. Sure.
that's not what we're dealing with at all. Like, yeah.
Favorite moment for me though was the after he enlists with the military and he's on that mud planet fighting.
Oh yeah.
Seeing a battle from the Empire's perspective was really cool.
Yeah.
And like it's
That
like
was
trench warfare. Like it honestly reminds me of Warhammer 40K and a lot of like
Yeah.
the human army is like, follow me, man, we're going up, and like like he's got like the pistol, everyone else has got the rifle, and it just kind of
Yeah.
Warhammer to me, which is awesome. But some final thoughts as we're getting close to a long episode here. What are your final thoughts for Solo and the score?
My final thoughts for Solo. Well, I guess my score is a 82, and I really like it. I feel like I wanted the backstory of Han. I really enjoyed it. I think for someone like Cassidy, I was showing it to her for the first time, all of them, and I think it adds a lot of flavor. Like I think these additional films, these Star Wars stories, add flavor to characters that for someone just entering the universe wants more of. The people that aren't going to go read the books and follow all the Wikipedia pages and be on the Reddits to find it all out, these movies give you enough to be like, wow, I really like that character, or oh, I don't like that character. If they're supposed to be unlikable, I think they're great. So I think this movie does a great job adding flavor to the universe and adding flavor to an otherwise arrogant, for no reason character. I think it provides a lot of reasoning for him being the way that he is.
Sure. I think it's a fun, bombastic film with a lot of memorable moments. Where I think it's only really let down by some odd choices, and I would also say, just for me, like it doesn't really need to exist, but I'm happy that it does. Because of that, I gave it a 65. I would say it's good, not great.
Okay.
Still a lot of fun to watch, though. Also worth it to note that Donald Glover as Lando is like perfect casting.
Yeah, 100%.
And I can't wait for because there was a Lando show that was announced with him, so hopefully it's still happening. Because everything looks like it's getting delayed from Star Wars right now. But anyhow, that's gonna bring us to an end. This has been a mammoth episode of the Drive Back Podcast. Thank you for sticking with us, Adrian. If someone wants to follow us online or kind of hear from us, where do they go?
The Drive Back Podcast anywhere. Find us on Instagram if you want to talk to us at the Drive Back Podcast. Find us here on YouTube. You can like and subscribe and hit the bell. We post every Monday. And then if you want to follow us on an app, Spotify, Apple Podcast, Stitcher, whatever you use, go ahead and follow us at the Drive Back. We post every Monday there as well. So go ahead and give us a follow and let us know what you think on Instagram. We love to hear from you guys on if you liked the episode or you didn't like it, or if we're just dumb. We love to hear all that stuff. So let us know.
I'm sure we're going to hear a lot on this one. So can't wait. Just wait till next week. So next week we're going to have a discussion episode. We're going to be talking about more hot takes from Star Wars, hopefully addressing some of the toxicity of the community, and why it's okay to like films. So don't hate people that do. Other than that, if you want to see anything that I have to say about new release films, there's my blog, which I'll link below, garrettokeefefilm.blogspot.com, where I review new releases and every film that we watch on the podcast and that I would just watch during the week. Should be some reviews of Ghostbusters up there soon. Hopefully get the chance to see Belfast this week, and then things like Encanto the week after. Other than that, that's going to be about it. Thank you so much for watching. Thank you so much for listening. And we love you so much. We will see you next time on The Drive Back. Thank you for listening to this episode of The Drive Back. Make sure to be on the lookout for new episodes every Monday, and make sure to follow us on social media.